Welcome to a new In the Mail, the series that will touch both your passion for electronics and your bank account at the same time. We're gonna start with this small and modern looking remote control. I actually like how this one feels, even though the cost was just $3 shipped. It just feels well built. The quality of the plastic is nice. The buttons have this nice click, and it comes preloaded with batteries, which is rare these days. I don't know what type of battery it uses, but we could check that right now. There is a screw holding this cap. It might be one of those 12 volt cells. This video is sponsored by jlcpcb.com, who recently upgraded their offer, so you now get 24 hours turnaround time and you can choose any solder mask color for the same price of just $2. Prototyping is now faster and cheaper, so it's definitely worth checking them out. Yep, so it's a 12 volt cell 27A. This is not ideal because these are not as cheap and as common as other types of batteries, and they don't have a lot of capacity either, but it's good that at least it comes pre-installed with a battery. I haven't told you what you can do with this yet. This is a programmable remote control on 433 megahertz. You can basically put this into a learning mode. Then you press a button and on the original remote control for your garage door or whatever gadget, and this will learn and store that code, being able to replay it later as many times as you need it. You can then use this remote control to open the garage door or whatever you like to control, but do note that this will not work with all 433 MHz remotes because some remote controls employ some form of coding to protect the signal from being easily cloned. Take for example the Automotive key fobs. Some of those work on 433 MHz, but you won't be able to clone them with this remote. Nonetheless, useful for creating a copy of your garage door remote control, or even better, you could hack this remote and integrate it into your car dash console or on some of those unused button slots. That could be a cool project, and you won't have to remember to keep this with you or to replace its batteries. Next, I have a small pair of side cutters. I liked these the moment I saw them on AliExpress, and I had to order a pair. The quality is probably not the best considering the very low price, but if you use them just for thin copper wires and thin resistor leads, these should last a reasonable amount of time and do the job. I really like the form factor. This small size can really be an advantage if you're trying to get in there inside an enclosure to cut something, but also on the bench. I like having compact tools like this one because in the end there is limited bench real estate, and I often find myself with a bench overcrowded by wire strippers, side cutters, crimp tools, hobby knives, tweezers, etc. I would be curious to see if something this small exists made by one of the big name manufacturers, something that would have some higher grade steel blades like Knipex, but of course I could just check their website and find out. Links for all of these items will be in the description below the video. Next, I have a bag which contains different rating thermal fuses, because in the past year I found myself repairing different household items that had blown thermal fuses. These kinds of problems need some investigating though, because you need to find out if there was something else causing the machine to overheat and the thermal fuse to trip. But anyway, the point here is that I wanted to have a kit of these fuses, so I no longer have to wait a few days for that one thermal fuse with a special value to be delivered for the repair to be completed. I remember many years ago, and this is a funny story, when I first encountered one of these thermal fuses. It was burnt. I was trying to repair a module and I got a replacement fuse. It was the first time I was seeing these thermal fuses. So I soldered in the replacement, and to my surprise, the new fuse was burnt as well. I spent a few minutes thinking if I got a bad fuse from the store or if something else was wrong, but then I finally realized these are thermal fuses, so they trip on temperature, and so they shouldn't be heated while soldering. It was a fun and stupid mistake I did as a beginner, and I will remember that for the rest of my life. Next, I have a couple of EL wires with the associated 12 volts drivers. As you'll notice, these have a special shape with this wedge, and they are designed for automotive use, and you can make use of this wedge by inserting it in the edge between two joining panels on a car's interior. This makes it easy to install and create that OEM look for ambient lighting. And then you have the 12 volt driver modules, and I would recommend connecting these in parallel with some existing lighting, because that way the brightness adjustment for the interior lights will also reflect on the luminosity of the neon wire. It's subtle, not a lot of control, but you do see some brightness control by varying the input to these modules. And also by connecting them in parallel with some existing lighting, you also have them turning on with the rest of the interior lights on your car. This is a white neon light, and the output is barely visible here in these bright lights, but in general it's pretty dim. In a car at nighttime though, this will be visible with just enough light. I would still prefer the LED plus fiber channel, if only I could find some that is of decent quality with even illumination across the entire length. As you can imagine, a fiber channel would have a higher brightness output and longer usage hours by using an LED instead of this EL wire. My next item is probably the smallest physical form of the ever so popular digital RGB LED. We all know the 50-50 and the 35-35 size for these RGB LEDs, but this one is even smaller. This is based on the SK6812 driver chip, and this package is just 4 by 2 millimeters. The annoying thing is that you can only find this in a side mount configuration, so the contacts for these LEDs are placed on the side, meaning you'll get side illumination by installing this LED on a PCB. Well, that's annoying for me. I'm sure there are applications out there where this has a very good use case, maybe in some small LCD backlight illumination. I don't know, but for me it would be best if I could find a small digital RGB LED that has the classic vertical mounting position and works on 3.3 volts as well. So far I couldn't find anything to match this description. The best I could find so far is the SK6812 in 35-35 package, but those are normally rated for 5 volts, and yes, they work on 3.3 volts, but that's outside the quoted specifications. And also I've noticed that depending on the status of the data lines, the driver chip will turn on all LEDs if there is power with no data at power on, which is annoying because you might want to have the LED off when you turn on the system and only later show something by turning the LED on. Nonetheless, if you need small side-mounted RGB LEDs, these might fit the description. Since we are in the optoelectronics department, I'm also going to show these Bargraph LEDs. They have 12 segments. The lower 8 are green, the upper 4 are red, so these would be ideal for some VU meter type application. They are thinner than your standard Bargraph modules from Kingbright, for example. Those have been industry standard for years, but these ones are thinner and taller than those, and they also have a different pinout. You would expect to have two terminals for each LED horizontally, so two rows of pins, but this type of bar graph has only one row of pins. It's like stacking LEDs, so you get an alternation of anodes and cathodes all the way to the last LED. I have no particular project in mind for these, but I thought I'd get some just to add to the long list of different LEDs and LED bar graphs that I have. These just seemed interesting just because they are different. You'll find a link to this in the description below the video. Next, I have one of these Gooseneck LED lamps. I needed something like this to put some extra light on the 3D printing area. Sometimes you need to take a closer look at what's printing to see if there are any print issues, so this should help with that. It does work with a USB input, and inside there should be just a 1 watt LED with some resistors for current limiting on a small PCB. Ideally you would power it from a USB charger. I wouldn't trust plugging this into a USB port of a computer unless the current is very low. So let's check the current with a USB meter on my power bank. And the current is just 200 milliamps. Now I feel a bit more confident plugging this into a USB port on a computer. It doesn't produce that much light to be honest, but I also have some bright lights here over the bench. This is a cold white LED, and it's usually hard to find a nice warm white variant for these lamps. So if you'd like to use one of these as a reading light in the evening, I don't recommend using one of these cold white LEDs. Here is what I did a few years ago. I grabbed a nice LED from Cree. I think it was in a very warm white color. I don't remember the temperature rating, but it was very warm and relaxing to my eyes. And I replaced the LED inside the lamp. It was very easy to replace it, and I had my desired reading lamp. In fact, let's take it apart and show you how easy it is to replace the LED on one of these. You see, inside is just one of those star aluminum PCBs which can be easily exchanged, or you can change just the LED with a warm white LED. Next, I have a couple of computer specific items. First, let's take a look at this USB 3.0 hub from Ugreen. Now, since I moved to a desktop editing PC, I need a bunch of ports for plugging in various peripherals, and this hub hopefully fulfills that need. Let me get it out of the box. So we have 4 USB 3.0 ports. I'm not particularly interested in the speed of these ports, so I'm not gonna be transferring at high speeds over this hub. Not interested in that. I just need multiple ports easily accessible. Another thing that I was looking for is for the USB cable to be permanently attached to the hub like it is here. I don't want to fiddle with this connection or to have it accidentally disconnect. I want this cable to be fixed on the hub and also have a fixed length. That's why I got the 1 meter cable. That's all the length I need. This is a pretty stiff cable, although I'm not sure that is necessarily a bad thing or a quality issue. It might just be that stiff due to USB 3 specs. This also has a micro USB port on the back where you can supply external power if you want to power various hosts from these ports, but I won't be needing that either. I will mostly be connecting USB to serial converters and other projects and development boards, and maybe an occasional flash drive. So far this looks good, but we'll see how it does in practice. Next, I got a 2.5-inch SATA hard drive enclosure with USB 3.0. It's from Orico, and I believe it's the same thing as Ugreen, just repackaging stuff made by someone else. Not much to be said here, except that this thing comes with everything you need inside it. So it's useful to buy something like this if you have a 2.5-inch drive that you don't use anymore, or an SSD in 2.5-inch format, or if you simply need some way of connecting 2.5-inch drivers to your computer. This comes with a short USB 3.0 cable inside, data and power over the same line, and should be enough for driving a small 2.5-inch drive. I'm not sure on the performance of this. Of course, they're going to quote the absolute maximum theoretical speed for USB 3 on the box or in the manual, but in practice, we all know results might vary. What I can do is to take this apart and maybe we can see which controller it uses for the USB interface. And we shouldn't be surprised by this, but there are very few components in here. It's cost optimization. This has the J-Micron JMS 578 controller chip right here, and another chip here which is a 1 megabit flash memory. Apart from that, we just have a crystal and some passives for the coupling. It's amazing they've integrated everything in this controller. It has USB 3 interface, it's backward compatible with USB 2.0. It has all the needed voltage regulators integrated inside the chip and supports an external flash chip like we have here. This is a 1 megabit flash chip which just contains some USB descriptors and IDs to identify the vendor of this gadget. I also had a spare USB 2 expansion port on my motherboard, so I ordered this PCI expansion port with 2 USB ports. This will go on the back of my desktop editing machine and will provide me with an additional 2 ports. I'm surprised that these cables actually feel nice and soft. I was expecting the worst quality, but in reality they are not as bad as I was expecting them to be. And the last item in today's video is this roll of Velcro type material for cable management. You can probably find this in a variety of sizes, colors and branding on AliExpress, so pick your favorite. I got this black roll. I believe it's 5 meters long and 15 millimeters wide. And in the past I used to use zip ties, but those are not ideal for cable management. This Velcro works better than those zip ties. You cut it to the exact length, and when you decide to change something, you just move it to where it's convenient. You can reuse it somewhere else without any issues, without any waste, as it happens with zip ties. That was all for today. I hope you found something interesting in this video. If you did, let me know in the comments below, and I will also really appreciate a thumbs up for this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week with a new video.